that they have made. My name is Angela Scorino, and I will be the MC for today. It gives me great joy to see so many faces that I know, and for us to be honouring a project that is so important to the history of the Italian community in South Australia, but equally the history of South Australia. So I welcome you to the launch of La Partenza, Voyage to a New Beginning, the Journal of the Italian Immigration by the Italian Historical Society of South Australia. Benvenuti a tutti, non voglio ripetere quello che ho già detto in inglese, però voglio dire almeno benvenuti. I need to do one or two housekeeping matters. We are all quite compressed, so I'd suggest that people watch carefully various cords so that we remain safe. The facilities are just in the white building across the way, and so if people need those, out the door and straight ahead. Let us acknowledge, and I'd like to begin today by acknowledging that we meet on the lands of the Kintore. People as the traditional owners of the Adelaide plains, and we pay our respects to elders past and present. We recognise the wisdom and the love of land that people remind us of our constitution. It's my pleasure now to introduce Mr. Giuseppe Gerasitano, if we're going to say it in English. I'd like to simply say that Joe is, as most people would know, the president of the Italian Historical Society of South Australia. He is the driving force, it would be fair to say, he is the driving force, along with family members, and obviously the committee that will be acknowledged in a moment. So I'd like to invite Joe to give the welcome address.
Good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the launch of La Partenza, Voyage to a New Beginning. It is the inaugural Journal of Italian Immigration presented by the Italian Historical Society of South Australia. This afternoon, we will share with you the purpose of this journal and the journey that led us to its creation. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge some apologies received from those unable to join us due to prior engagements or health reasons. The Honourable Peter Malamaskis, MP, Premier of South Australia, the Honourable Vincent Tasia, MP, Leader of the Opposition, the Honourable Zoe Benison, MP, Minister for Tourism and Multicultural Affairs, the Honourable George Teague, MP, Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Shadow Attorney General, Shadow Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, Shadow Minister for Child Protection, and Shadow Minister for Multicultural Affairs. No wonder he can't be here. He's got too many jobs. The Honourable Matt Burnell, MP, Member for Spence, Mayor Angela Evans, Mayor of St Charles III, Mr. Ernesto Gianelli, Consul of Italy, Mr. Greg Mackey, OIM, Chief Executive History Trust of South Australia, Dr. Christy Kokaja, Deputy Chief Executive History Trust of South Australia, Mr. Paul Rees, Head of Marketing, Museum and Major Events, History Trust of South Australia, the Honourable Hugh Van Lee and Mrs. Lee, Ambassadors, Migration Museum of South Australia, Mr. Bruce Lee, AM, Chairman, State Library of South Australia, Mr. Patrick Fitzpatrick, President, History Council of South Australia, Professor Marinella Marno, President of Comitas, Ms. Silvia Di Cesare, President, South Australian Association of Teachers of Italian, Ms. Emma Lexardo from Il Colpo, Cavaliere Sebastiano Calippo, Ambassador, Italian Historical Society of South Australia, Cavaliere Nick Fazzolari, OIM, Vice President, Italian Historical Society of South Australia, and Ms. Teresa Dell'Acqua Leonardi. We are honoured to welcome our distinguished guests in attendance. The Honourable Claire Boyer, MP, Minister of Education, Training and Skills, and representing the Premier and Minister for Multicultural Affairs. The Honourable Heidi Girolamo, MLC, Deputy Leader of the Opposition in the Legislative Council, Shadow Minister for Cost of Living, Shadow Minister for Finance, Shadow Minister for Tax Reform, and Shadow Minister for Education. Dr. Carlo Pascal, representing the History Council of South Australia, Ms. Antonella Macchia and Ms. Maria Kitchening, past Presidents, South Australian Association of Teachers of Italian, Grande Ufficiale Dr. Carmen Pasquale, AM, co-patron of the Italian Historical Society of South Australia, and Ms. Rita Palumbo, Ambassador, Italian Historical Society of South Australia. Members of the Italian media, Radio Italiana 531 and Radio Italia Uno. Our dedicated committee and editorial committee of the Italian Historical Society, and of course the contributors whose stories grace the pages of this journey. Thank you for joining us today and for celebrating this important milestone with us. We extend our gratitude to the Migration Museum of South Australia and its manager, Narelle Bryan, for hosting this event. We hope this is the first of many collaborations. Special thanks also to our sponsors, Calippo Food Company and the Honourable Jim Lee, MLC, for their generous assistance for this journey. Thank you to Rosemary Gerisitano for designing the beautiful cover, Jenny Gerisitano for her graphic work and typesetting, Cavaliere Associate Professor Angela Scarino, our Master of Ceremonies, and Anna Farrugia for ongoing refreshment. We sincerely hope you enjoy this afternoon and find inspiration in the stories shared. And I think in my welcoming, I forgot to mention the Honourable Jim Lee, Independent Master for the Upper House, and Frank Fangala, the Honourable Frank Fangala, MLC, who's also an independent member of the Italian Council. Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks very much, Joe, for setting the scene for us this afternoon. It is my great pleasure to now invite the Honourable Claire Boyer, MP, Minister for Education, Training and Skills, representing the Premier. I'm delighted to be welcoming you because of that important connection in its own right between education and history. And so very much look forward to your words this afternoon. Thanks.
I also just begin by acknowledging the land that we're all gathered on today is Ghana land, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Can I also acknowledge a number of my parliamentary colleagues as well? First of all, the Shadow Minister for Education, Heidi Joanmo, great to have you here. Heidi, Jim Lee, Frank Pangello, special mention to my very good friend Tony Zambia, the federal member for Mayfield, who's here as well. Scott Kennedy, the candidate for L'Oreal, so good to have you here, Scott, as well. Elizabeth, as the chair of the History Trust, great to have you here, and thank you for your many years of support in your role. Representing the Italian media, who are here as well. Angela, to you, of course, we've known each other for very many years, but I know how passionate you are on these topics, so I'm glad to still have the opportunity to work with you in this role. Joe, to you, of course, as well, thank you for your warm introduction. But most importantly, to the people here today who have played a role in producing this quite remarkable document, Partenza, Voyage to a New Beginning. And as I drove in this morning from the northeastern suburbs where I live, I was having a bit of a think about this incredible piece of history here. But it was just 7 days ago for me that I was actually just across the way at Torrens Parade Ground, where in my capacity as Minister for Education, I was talking to an assembled group of high school students, parents and teachers from all parts of our education system, public, Catholic, independent, about Virtual War Memorial, which is a fantastic organisation that we fund and have funded for many years through the South Australian Education Department to support people being able to put up the history and artefacts, might be old letters or whatever it might be, of servicemen and women who have fought in war, the major conflicts for Australia, onto an online platform so we can preserve there for all time. And then we run competitions for young people from schools to research on a particular veteran as part of their SACE, so their leaving certificate. Those who really get an opportunity to go to Vietnam or in the past to the Western Front to see where those conflicts took place. And I spoke to those young people about how important it was that we preserve that history, that there are some incredible mementos, tokens of, in this case, people's service for Australia in global conflicts that exist often in a shoebox underneath a bed, or sometimes they come up on Gumtree and Facebook Marketplace and people trying to sell them. If it wasn't for somewhere for that history to live, it would be forgotten really for all of time. And it occurred to me that this is actually another fantastic example of that. The work that has gone into this publication here, and a lot of work has gone into this to preserve the stories of people who were part of the wave of migration that came to Australia and South Australia, particularly after the Second World War, but before that as well, are really important parts of South Australia's history. And unless we do things like this, where we make a really concerted effort through the hard work of individuals to capture it and keep it, and then it's gone forever. And one of the things that has always struck me as the son of a history teacher from high school, I was always taught the importance of history and making sure that we understand mistakes of the past so they aren't repeated, but also to understand the successes of the past as well, and to understand the stories of people who have come before you. And particularly in terms of Italian migration and Italian migration to our state, some of those stories are unbelievable. But in the space of just a generation or two, no matter how remarkable that story might be, it can be totally lost unless you preserve it in something like this that's gone forever. And Heidi and I are here today as Minister and Shadow Ministers for Education, because we both fundamentally believe we need to keep teaching this. But unless we have resources like this where it's captured that will actually ignite the imagination of young people at schools, they are not going to be interested in actually learning about it. And as time passes and generations move on, that history is gone. And I think it's humbling for me to be here today as the Education Minister to launch something that really stretches so far back into our history with so many remarkable stories. And what I really hope is that this journal can actually form part of our teaching of history in our high schools in South Australia, because the observation again that I used in terms of the Virtual War Memorial and why it is so powerful, I think, for young people who, let's be totally frank about this, it's hard to get them excited. I think harder than there's ever been to get them excited about learning about history, is that they can actually find an ex-serviceman or woman who came from their primary school or from their high school, and I think making that connection between where they go to school now and where someone who went all the way maybe to the Western Front to fight and die for their country went to school, is that link you need to get them excited about history, to actually sit down and take some time to learn about it. And because this is so well, in terms of individualised around our state and those stories, again, it provides that opportunity for young people from our state to learn about people who weren't in circumstance or didn't live anywhere that was so distant or remote from where they live. They don't think it's sort of in their realm of interest or has no relevance to them. These are stories of everyday migrants who did extraordinary things, extraordinary tales of hardship, to be here, to set up a business and a life for their families. And so many of the things that they did and they forged in our state are now just taken for granted. That most young people wouldn't even understand have a connection to those migrants. But I think because we have this document here, which is really tailored to our state, is actually a fantastic resource for young people here to get them interested in this really important part of our history, which is great for them in terms of understanding how we are the nation that we are today, but hopefully also, in the process, keeping alive the memory of so many of the people who are captured in this document. If it wasn't for having this journal, it would probably be forgotten forever, which would be a truly sad thing. So it is my pleasure to be here today to be a part of this, and more than anything else, can I congratulate and thank all those people who were part of putting this together. I really hope it lives on for a very long time. So thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Great to see that connection that you've made with young people, because the young people really do need to connect. The stories that we tell are stories about who we all are, children, young people, adults, but it's a lovely message, a very powerful message for young people especially, and I appreciated you highlighting that. I'm just going to call back Joe, who has a few more words to say, and then we will continue.
Sorry about making a second appearance. As I say, the best laid plans sometimes go awry. In this case, the two pages stuck together. And I thought the lecture was a little bit short. Did I miss out? Well, I did miss out quite a bit. There were a couple of other people that we need to acknowledge that are present. I already mentioned the Honourable Gently, MLC, and the Honourable Frank Gallo, MLC. Mr. Scott Kennedy, candidate from Moriarty, representing the Leader Opposition. The Honourable Tony Zappia, MP, member for Macon. Mr. Adam Patterson, Manager of Curatorial History, Trust of South Australia. Ms. Caroline Donaghy, I think I'm pronouncing that one right. Manager of Museum History Trust of South Australia. The Honourable Cavaliere Julian Stefani, AM, Ambassador from Migration Museum of South Australia. Ms. Christine Schoff, President of Oral History Australia, South Australia, Northern Territory, and Dr. David Sweet, Deputy President, History Council, South Australia. Thank you. Sorry, Mr.
Thanks, Joe. And it is important to acknowledge that so many people from so many organisations are able to come together this afternoon to honour this work and this project. I'm very happy to now introduce Heidi Girolamo, MLC, Deputy Leader of the Opposition in the Legislative Council, but also Shadow Minister for Cost of Living, Finance, Tax Reform and Education. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me here today. It's a real honour to be able to be with the launch of a large Partenza, the Voyage to the New Beginning. And it's just a really exciting time, I think, within the Italian community to be able to celebrate such a significant publication. I'd also like to acknowledge Minister Boyer and my parliamentary colleagues from Jingli, Honourable Frank Tangello and Tony Zapier, and of course Scott Kennedy, the candidate for Laureature. And thank you very much for having me here today. I think that it's clear that the Italian History Society is just such an important organisation, really showcasing the history here, and I'm really pleased to be able to be part of the launch and to be here today as well, representing the opposition. Many arrived from Italy with little English and even less certainty, but they worked tirelessly here in South Australia to be able to establish their families, their businesses, and to be able to raise their children here in South Australia. I'm very lucky to have married into an incredible Italian-Australian family. My father-in-law Joe, along with his mother, his brother Paz, and his sister Lena moved to Australia from Molinara in the late 50s when Joe was only 9 years old. Joe's father Rocco had moved some 4 years beforehand, and Joe has told me when he arrived in Australia, he asked who was that man waving to him, because it had been such a significant time since he'd seen his own father. And his sister Lena was actually not born when Rocco left to make the journey across to Australia. Rocco's managed to set up a wonderful life for his family here, working at Simpson Pope and in the factory over many, many years, working incredibly hard to be able to buy a large block of land at Kilkenny and to set up a wonderful life for his family. I think this, obviously, La Partenza really does highlight and ensure that the impact of South Australian families, like my in-laws, that we really understand the impact that is made onto our state, whether it be from olive oil to Italian restaurants, from vineyards to grocery stores. The innovation has flavoured our lives, making South Australia richer and more vibrant. And today we very much enjoy the fruits of the labour. Many migrants worked incredibly hard when they came over here to make sure that their families were set up for success. We must continue to collect these fading voices, ensuring that the sacrifices and dreams of Italian migrants are passed on to our children and our children's children. We have a responsibility to protect and preserve these stories. And I have been told that my husband's family, when they moved over here, that there were people from Italy wanting to come over and study the dialect that was here as well, because many Italians that came here never went back to Italy because they loved their life here in Australia, and the language as well, to be able to continue on, that is really important as well. I think it's a real testament to the resilience and the hope of the Italian-Australian community being able to establish a great life here in South Australia. And as this publication is launched, we must honour those who came before us and commit to preserving their legacy for many generations to come. Congratulations to the Italian Historical Society for this extraordinary achievement. Thank you to the work that you're putting in to capture and celebrating this rich history. Your efforts ensure that future generations, like my children Max and Olivia, will not only know where they came from, but understand the strength and character it took to get here. Grazie mille, and thank you very much for the privilege of being here today.
Thank you very much, Harvey, and great to receive some personal background there and to hear your own family's story. There are so many interconnections now that it really is like an integration into the very fabric of the state, and I think that these stories are very much a part of that larger picture of the Italian community and many other communities in South Australia. It gives me great pleasure now to introduce the Honourable Jean Lee, ULC, independent member of the Legislative Council.
Thank you very much, Angela. Probably don't need a microphone, but it will be helpful. Can I first of all acknowledge, of course, like Joe, the president of the Italian Historical Society, Jenny and family, and also committee members for putting together not just a journal but hosting us today. I want to also thank Elizabeth Hall and the Honourable Julian Stefani, the History Trust and the Migration Museum for working collaboratively of hosting this particular event, because without those strong partnerships, I think often things don't get done. So it is a labour of love. I mean, today is a testament that this particular journal is very, very important, not just to honouring the Italian community of South Australia, but to honour the resilience, the hard work, the heart and soul of the Italian community, that which is the backbone of our multicultural community, and hence why, it's no surprise, we have the Minister Blair Boyer, we have Heidi here, as well as Frank Pangallo of Italian Heritage, very proud, and of course Sid Giannis. Actually, I've learned how to say your name in Greek these days. Is Steve Joganas or Joganas, or slightly different. And Tony Zapier, as well as Scott Kennedy, representing as a candidate for Moriata. Today, amongst all of us, I see so many familiar faces, faces that I can call you. In my culture, I probably call you, brothers or sisters or auntie or uncle, because that's how I've been brought up. And yesterday I have the honor, together with Eddie, attended a 100 years birthday celebration of a Chinese migrant that had been here for more than 50 years. She came in the room, grand entrance, and she danced to the music. And still very agile and energetic. And I thought about her today, and I come with a heart full of joy and gratitude. I think such a journal does touch our heart in so many ways, because as a first generation migrant, my mum and dad said to me that you must look up to the Italian community for inspiration, because our first home was a Payneham. So you think about all the settlement of lots of Italian migrants in the area, and as new migrants back then, 45 years ago, we always get fresh produce delivered to our front door. And we kind of go, okay, which neighbour does it come from now? Is it Gino? Or is it, Mary? Or is it Anna? It's all those Italian neighbours that give so much love and support to new migrants. And it gives us hope that as first generation migrants, we can survive in a land of opportunity like Australia, because there are other people that have paved the way for us. It's never going to be easy, but there's that touch of support, that resilience, that level of, I suppose, the common community spirit that Italian community can bring to us. And I'm very grateful for that. And hence, when Joe said to me, he said, would you like to support this particular journal and put an ad in and make some contribution, I jumped to it. I didn't hesitate. I think it's a really good opportunity to do so, and I'm very pleased. I didn't ask to be at the back page, but I've got a back page, so I'm grateful, because every time Minister Blair hold up when he hold up the journal, and here I am. So I'm thankful. And to be a historian, it takes really hard work, it takes precision, articulation, research, hours and hours of work. And Joe and Jenny recently caught up with them, and they say, you don't realize I am busier than I was when I was working. So that is that whole body of work that goes into it. So we must say thank you. And I also want to acknowledge the radio station, Radio Italiana, that are here broadcasting. So I think it's really wonderful that those that can't get out on a hot day like this is able to remember the historical moment of the journal. I just want to end by saying, probably quoting from my grandparents, we are not who we are without the past. So when you're drinking water, you must remember the source of where the water comes from. That is about preservation of our culture, of our heritage, and also of our DNA and that background. We have to pay respect to our ancestors. And this particular journal, which is La Partenza, Voyage to a New Beginning, it is that new beginning that paved the way for a successful multicultural society that we currently live in. We cherish them, we thank you, we honor you, the Italian community, because of what you do so much. Every single aspect of our society, your contribution has been immense. Thank you so much for allowing me to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for your words and for the fabulous appreciation of history. Also, thank you for making us laugh. The stories are poignant. The stories provoke emotion, as stories always do. You provoked our laughter. It's an important reminder for me that migration stories are stories of hard work and toil and so on. But they are also stories of immense joy, of accomplishment, of being together in community. And I liked also your appreciation of the whole room of contributors actually and connections to this kind of work. So thank you very much. Elizabeth Ho is the person who is going to be launching officially La Partenza, Voyage to a New Beginning, Journal of Italian Immigration. I'm not sure that everyone in the Italian community knows Elizabeth, but I've had the privilege of having known her for a long, long time through our mutual connection at the University of South Australia. Elizabeth, or Liz as we call her, is the chair of the History Trust of South Australia. Again, a very, very important organisation thinking about the history of the state as a whole and mounting enormously rich festivals and projects over so many years. Liz has many roles related to history, but what I appreciate most is the genuine way in which Liz always interacts with people, has an immense commitment to people. She is a real people's person, committed to people, committed to ideas, committed to history, committed to equity and genuine inclusion. There is no better person here today, Liz, than you to actually launch this fabulous piece of work. Liz Holmes.
Angela, you didn't give me a chance to give you a hug, really. That was an incredibly generous welcome from a woman that I know is so distinguished for her support of the Italian language, Italian culture, but also someone who really understands that we have this beautiful multicultural society, which so many have contributed to. And the Italian story is such a special part of that. As the chair of the History Trust, I'm someone who's lived and breathed history since I was at school. And I feel a great sense of privilege to have been the chair for almost 9 years. In that time, running museums, programs, festivals, the Day to Birdwood, the whole panoply of history has been a wonderful gift to me to be able to be part of that. But my heart lies especially where we are today. And I'd like to start by paying my respects to the Gunn people. We're on the site of the first school where English was taught to Aboriginal children. And as we know, there was a tsunami of hardship and profound change that lay ahead for them and their people. And tsunamis of change are embedded in the deep history of the world. There's hardly a corner of the planet that has ever escaped. There are resonances of this reality with us today as we welcome fresh waves of refugees and migrants in traumatic situations often, and here we give them a sense of safety, of being able to look to a future. And so let's think about that positive. We're actually welcoming another small future, a future of the history of Italians in South Australia with this beautiful journal. I love the paper, I love the feel of it, I love the illustrations. It's been beautifully put together. And as a beautiful thing, it won't be lost in the computer maze. It will, I think, sit quite proudly on the shelves, and it will be taken off the shelf and its pages turned with a great deal of interest and love. So, this is the Journal of Italian Immigration, La Partenza, the journey to a new beginning. Here it is, at last, Joe. And let us thank the hard-working editorial committee. In fact, since the COVID pandemic, the Italian Historical Society of South Australia, with its wonderful president and the wonderful editorial team, have been collecting the short stories of immigration experience. These are diverse, and they're also written from the heart. They're there to capture us, to make us understand the emotion that goes with coming to a new place. I'm a bit sad that it was stimulated by the loss of some resources in the Italian department at Flinders University. This is partly why it has come about. But this journal will not only publish short stories, but it will also feature aspects of Italian history with a particular focus on immigration and immigration. In this issue, this important publication has been supported by contributors who have literally wrapped themselves up in the hopes, dreams and struggles of the Partenza. And I think as a first gift to our community and to our knowledge of what has made South Australia, this is impressive as an historical document. And every year there will be another one to tell us more. Going back to that word, Partenza, it says so much. Its meaning can be departure, but it can also be a beginning. The two are intertwined, and the South Australian experience of so many bears witness to the combination of pain, loss, grief at leaving homeland, and then hopes and promises in the beginning of a new life. The very word Partenza echoes the purpose of our Migration Museum: to explain the experience that has shaped so many and what we are today. This was the first migration museum in the world. It opened nearly 40 years ago, in 1986. Our paved courtyard, family tree, with its engraved pavers, honours names from 2,800 families. It is a completed and powerful project of the Migration Museum Foundation, and it's been supported by these families. Many of those pavers out there in the courtyard bear Italian names, and many of the family stories that go with those pavers sit in a database inside the museum. And these have become, if you like, a collective recognition of Partenza. In time, we hope to renew this site, and especially our exhibition, and this will be the next fundraising campaign of the Migration Museum Foundation. We want this site to be a beacon of social cohesion, and especially to build up a school visit program to engage our young people and tell these really beautiful migration stories. We look to communities like your own to be part of that renewal. Another key message is that this is a living museum. We may present the past, we may explain that many people have settled here, but we also want to ensure that there are living cultural events happening on this site. And today is a very good example of that. We have a focus on history, but this gathering here today is a testament to the living pride of the Italian South Australian community, which continues to help our state thrive. We give the past a future through these efforts, through being here, through honouring our past, but honouring it in the present. A personal story, if you'll just give me a couple of moments. My father and mother came here with nothing but hopes and dreams, and set up a business in Norwood that was supported by a young workforce of very capable female Italian immigrants. Frankie, Angelina, and Mariana sang their beautiful regional southern Italian songs in my dad's little factory. They shared their beautiful bread with olive oil and garlic at lunchtime. They invited my family to all their weddings, and we enjoyed a wonderful, wonderful friendship. White sugared almonds in little net bags, preserved salty black olives were my favourite treats. I have so many memories from my childhood and gratitude for that window on such a rich community culture in those days. This journal paints the migrant experience in conservative Adelaide of the post-war period very faithfully. It was hard for me, but gradually the policies of multicultural Australia stifled the put-downs, the discrimination, and the sense of superiority that faced many on arrival. The value of living in a well-organised society under the rule of law and with democratic structures is not overlooked or ignored by these communities. As the pages show here, Italian South Australians became local government councillors and entered Parliament within a relatively short time. Others worked extremely hard to benefit their families. Key businesses were established too, and soon university education became accessible for the next generation. The children were now safely separated from the poverty, the war trauma, and the lack of opportunity that have plagued their grandparents and their parents. I'm absolutely delighted that this Historical Society project has attracted national interview requests, and even from Italy, and that these interviews have generated significant interest both here and abroad. And I'd like to finish by really echoing something that Julie said, and that is, it's hard to be an historian. It takes a mighty amount of work, and I'd like to commend everybody who's worked towards this goal, and you can be assured that the History Trust of South Australia values every single contribution that you've made. We appreciate sound research, we appreciate new perspectives, and this journal is definitely in that category. I'd also like to congratulate heartily Jo and the editorial team, the contributors and the designers, the people that put the thing together and make it sing. And it's such an honour to launch this very significant record here at the Migration Museum, where we pay faithful tribute to the experience of Partenza. It's my great pleasure to launch Volume 1 of the Journal of the Italian Historical Society of South Australia. Thank you.
Thanks to Liz, I can't stress enough how powerful your words are connecting to this fabulous place, and I hope that part of the renewal of the Migration Museum remains connected to this kind of initiative, very important for all of us. I'm one of the people who has had the privilege of actually reading through and studying all of these contributions. I got very excited about that, and a reminder of a project that I myself did in relation to my community of collecting stories, everyday stories of our community. And so we do have a treat in store next, and that is Jo will be offering thanks to all of our fabulous speakers this afternoon. But also, I think he has in mind just a little treat to entice you to dip further into the bits of it.
Well, we heard of the second coming, he's the third coming. Actually, I'm glad I prepared something because I am speechless after all those compliments about the publication. It has been a labour of love. It also been stressful. But it has been an idea growing within myself and with the committee for many years, and I'm finally pleased to see it come to fruition. So thank you, Elizabeth. We are honoured that you have done the honours. We are honoured by your presence, and your contribution to South Australian history is well known. So thank you very much. Thank you to the Minister, and thank you, Heidi, for your contribution. I will be knocking on the door, by the way, Minister, because some of this information seems to need to be incorporated in our curriculum. And I'm speaking here as a former teacher, not just as a historian. Well, 70 years after the end of mass Italian immigration to South Australia, we find ourselves in a world very different from the one that greeted our parents and grandparents as they arrived on these shores for a better life. Italians have been part of the South Australian community almost since the colony's earliest days. South Australia was officially settled on the 28th of December 1836, when Governor Hymas proclaimed a colony at the Old Gum Tree in Glenelg. Just 3 years later, the first Italian arrived on the 19th of September 1839, 25-year-old Antonio Giannoni from Rimini disembarked from the Discovery and made Adelaide his home. Over the past 186 years, Italian immigrants have significantly contributed to the growth and development of South Australia. The most substantial wave of migration occurred between the 1950s and the late 1970s, during which an estimated 30,000 Italians settled in our state. But 2021, their enduring legacy was evident, with over 103,000 individuals representing 6.2% of the South Australian population identifying as having Italian heritage. This influx of Italian immigrants profoundly shaped the South Australian way of life. Alongside other migrants, communities that transformed South Australia from a monocultural Anglo-Celtic society into a vibrant, multicultural state that we know today. Despite this profound impact, there remains a lack of records and readily available information about the activities and contributions of the migrant population, especially those from non-English speaking backgrounds. History books gloss over the experience of non-Anglo-Celtic settlers, and very few of their stories are preserved in our national or state archives. It was to address this imbalance that the Italian Historical Society of South Australia was founded. The Society is dedicated to exploring and documenting the Italian South Australian experience through oral histories, photographs, documents, and community contribution. Our aim is to collect, preserve, and promote the history of Italian immigration to South Australia. We strive to establish a comprehensive repository of stories, letters, images, and other material that record and celebrate the contribution of the Italian immigrants to this state development. Our primary focus is the collection of oral histories, first-hand accounts of the migration experience. These stories and documents are submitted to the State Library as part of the J.D. Somerville Oral History Collection, which aims to reflect the voice and experience of South Australians. We believe that spoken word is the most important medium for capturing the emotional and cultural depth of these journeys, especially considering that many of the migrants from Italy, particularly during the mid-20th century, come from a background with rural background with very little or no formal education. These whole-of-life stories guide the interviewee through their personal journey, covering life and regional customs in Italy before immigration, motivation to emigrate, avoidance to South Australia, the experience upon arrival, reactions and challenges and successes in their new home, and contribution to the development of South Australia. These oral stories are transcribed and deposited with the State Library and other appropriate institutions in accordance with Section 35 of the Libraries Act 1982. Copies of our publications are also available at the Migration Museum of South Australia. The Society has embarked on a project to record and leave for posterity the experience of Italian immigrants in South Australia. The name of the project is A Trunk Full of Dreams and a Suitcase Full of Memories, Stories of Italian Immigrants in South Australia. The stories are grouped under categories such as life achievement, business, sports, community, organisations, a tabula, the influence of Italian immigration on Australian food culture, trades, women in business culture, and so on. It is becoming increasingly urgent to document these stories as the Italian-born immigrants community in South Australia continues to age. According to the 2016 population census, the median age of Italian-born individual was 72, substantially higher than the overall median age of 40 for all South Australians. Although the exact median age for 2021 is not explicitly stated, it is expected to have risen further. Notably, a significant majority of Italian-born individuals in South Australia, in fact 72.8%, are aged 65 years and older. These stories have to be collected as soon as possible before we lose them forever. Perhaps this is an opportunity for me to make a pitch for funding for this document. It seems that we have got the Minister here, perhaps, and also the Chair of Horticultural Affairs. It is perhaps a good opportunity. Cool, I'm going to have my bread back. The authorities must realise that this history, although it is from a migrant perspective, is the history of South Australia. It is not migrant history, it is a history that we all belong. We are part of this country, we are part of this state, and therefore we are entitled to be able to record our experiences as part of South Australia. Not as Italians, not as Greeks, not as Malaysians or whatever, but as South Australians. And therefore I make an appeal that to the authorities and to those who are funding bodies, not only to look at festivals and equipment and so on, which are important, I'm not saying that, but also realise that without us leaving a footprint on our history will disappear. Now, creating the whole of history stories require considerable time commitment from both interviewees and interviewers. However, some participants may hesitate to invest the time and may struggle to provide detailed stories and documentation. Furthermore, specific research topics often require a different approach. To address this, the Italian Historical Society of South Australia has launched Partenza. It's a collection of short stories that often our grandparents, our parents tell us about. But if we don't record them, we lose them. To address, it's also an initiative to provide a publication avenue for postgraduate students. We already have spoken about the demise of the Italian department at Partenza University, one of the departments that was researching Italian immigrants. We no longer have the facilities, therefore we need another outlet. And we also to encourage schools with immigration-themed projects to contribute, give students a chance to share their work with the broader community. The study of Australian history is incomplete without a thorough analysis of immigration's profound influence. Making this subject a compulsory part of the education will foster a deeper understanding of the evolution and present-day framework of Australian society and institutions. I remember teaching Australian history, and I remember what I taught in Australian history to a predominantly Greek community. And they all look at me with amazement. So where are we? Because I'm not mentioned. So it is important to incorporate the history of immigration in our history. These short stories may be submitted in writing, or for those less confident in writing, orally, with the help of one of our editorial committee members who will assist in recording and shaping these narratives. And we have got a wonderful editorial committee that does a wonderful job. The origins of the 8 stories featured in this publication can be traced back 2020 during the time when the Society had to suspend its interviewing program due to the social interaction restrictions imposed by the COVID-19 epidemic. In response, the Society invited its members and supporters to contribute by sharing short narratives of their immigration journey. As I have mentioned, a publication like La Partenza would not be possible without the dedication of many individuals. Not only those sharing their stories, but also the editors who work tirelessly behind the scenes. Today, I would like to introduce the editorial team, the unsung heroes who brought this publication to life. As I call out your name, could you please come to the front so people can see who you are. First and foremost, Cavalaria's Associate Professor Angela Scarino. Laura Martino Kemp. Mario Russo. And Rosemary Giuseppano. On behalf of the Society, I sincerely thank you for your commitment. Of course, and please do take some photos, and they are the people that are going to be knocking on your door and saying, can I have your story?
We're ruthless.
Of course, our other unsung heroes are the contributors, whose stories are published today. And now I invite Rosemary Giuseppano, member of the editorial committee, to introduce our contributors.
Good afternoon. It is an honour to be here today to celebrate the remarkable journey of 8 extraordinary individuals and families. Fulvia Caruso, Rafael De Marco, told by his daughter Angela De Marco, the Di Martino family, told by Lara Di Martino Kent, Jack Guglielmo, represented by Marco Maria, Nella Santo, Giovanni Scalzi, told by his son Joe Scalzi, Michele Donato, told by his son Cavaliere Dr. Philip Donato IRAM, and Raphael and Maria Grazia Roccioppi, told by their daughter, Councillor Dr. Rachel Julio. Each of these stories shine a light on the courage, sacrifice, and deep humility and underpin the migrant experience in South Australia. Let us begin with Fulvia Caruso, born in Pesco Sanita, Italy in 1940. At just 16, she came to Australia to help her older sister settle and quickly become a cornerstone of her family's new life. Fulvia built a career, co-owned a successful dry cleaning business, and became renowned for her cooking, especially her famous gnocchi. She has dedicated her life to her family and to countless Italians, organisations and religious orders, volunteering her time and talents to bring people together and preserve culture. At 85, Fulvia remains a living bridge between generations, between Italy and Australia, tradition and progress. We celebrate Raphael Di Marco, a qualified surveyor from Benevento, who migrated in 1956. Though homesick
he built a successful public service career while his wife, Maria, flourished as a singer, bringing joy to Italian migrants for nearly 2 decades. Raphael became the first Italian elected to local government in South Australia, advocating for equality and migrant rights. His daughter Angela continued that legacy, shaping policy and programs for skilled migrants and working to improve the recognisation of overseas qualifications, helping thousands of newcomers bring meaningful life in Australia. Next, we share the remarkable story of the Di Martino family, told through Lara Di Martino Kent. Her parents, Carmen and Louisa, migrated from Belgium in 1966, bringing with them traditions from both Italy and France. Carmen worked for over 3 decades at Simpson Pope, and Louisa used her multilingual talents to serve others in hospitals, schools, and the wider community. Their daughters were raised trilingual and tricultural, values they now share through art and education. Claudia's The Good Italian Girl and Lara's historical fiction Cremona House ensure that these stories are honoured and shared with new generations. We turn to Jack Guglielmo, who migrated from Sicily to Australia in 1959 as a child. He carried with him not just the dreams of family, but the legacy of his grandfather, Francesco Guglielmo, who fled Mussolini, Italy in 1927, and helped build the Italian community in Adelaide. Jack became a well-loved musician in the Italian social scene, as well as a long-serving Kmart manager. His life is a testament to hard work, creativity, and blend of old and new cultures, of honouring your roots while embracing new possibilities. We honour Nella Sampo, born Filomena Larassa in 1956. In Persilico, Calabria, at 15 she boarded the Galileo Galilei with her family to start a new life in Australia. She began her life here in a Thai factory navigating a new language and culture. On the very journey, she met Luigi, known as Gino, who would become her husband. Despite cultural resistance and difficult beginnings, Nella and Gino built a loving life together, celebrating 50 years of marriage in 2024. Her story is quiet, resilient love and the strength that so many migrant women carry with grace. We now remember Giovanni Scalzi, born in Squalani in 1925, a dedicated carabinieri during and after World War II. Giovanni migrated to Australia in 1956 in search of a better life. He quickly became a pioneer for the Italian community, founding the South Australian selection of National Association of Carabinieri. Through the ceremonial traditions, community festivals, and friendship with Australian police, Giovanni helped bridge cultures and generations. His legacy lives on through his son Joe and the strongest relationships he fostered between Italian and Australian communities. We turn to the inspiring story of Michele Donato, born in 1934 in Beltevio, Italy. At just 14, him and his twin brother Mario bravely boarded the SS Toscana for Australia. With only 10 pounds and enormous courage, Michele went on to establish Donato Catering Services, the longest serving Italian caterers in South Australia. But more than a businessman, he was a beloved husband, father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. Known for his faith, humanity, and humour, Michele's legacy is one of the hard-working family devotion and service to communities. Finally, we honour the unforgettable love story of Raphael and Maria Grazia Ragiotti. Raphael left post-war Italy for a new life in Australia, leaving behind his secret fiancée Maria Grazia. But love has its own destiny. Maria Grazia courageously followed him, and they married just 2 weeks after the arrival in 1953. Together they worked in Canada factory, raised a family, and sponsored others to follow in their footsteps. Raphael passed away in 1988, but the example him and Maria Grazia set of devotion, preservation and sacrifice continues to inspire us all through their stories. Each of these individuals and families have contributed immensely to the heart and soul of South Australia. Their story reminds us that migration is not just a change of country, it's a transformation of generations. Let us honour them this afternoon not only with applause, but by continuing the legacy they have gifted us through compassion, courage and community. As we reflect on these powerful stories of migration, love, sacrifice and resilience, we are reminded that beyond every legacy is a voice, a family member who continues to carry it forward. We would now like to invite Cavalier Dr. Philip Donato, OAM, to the stage to share a few words about his beloved father, Michele Donato, a man whose faith, humour and tireless service left a mark on his family and the wider South Australian community. Please join me in warmly welcoming Philip.
Good afternoon, everyone. My respects firstly to the Gun people. On behalf of my mum, Maria, and my brother Anthony, who is today, our respects to the Gun people, Mr. Boyer, all your parliamentary colleagues, I don't have to look at to all the very many other distinguished people in the audience, to the ladies and gentlemen of our Italian community. Wonderful to be up here to be able to give you a bit of an overview of Dad and Dad's story. But first, before we do that, I'd like to congratulate President Joe and your committee for the launch today and for the release of this wonderful journal that will take its part in its true role in documenting history, which we come to do. So thank you very much. Congratulations. My dad's story is not too dissimilar to many other migrant stories in its themes. Themes of the migrant, whether they be Italian or Chinese, Greek, or many other, is the interesting beginnings, difficult times, the theme of courage to have to make change, make movement, leave everything behind, go forward, try and establish another life. The element of resilience to marry up with that courage, to make sure that once you got here, you rolled up your sleeves, went forward, looked forward, and made whatever decision you made, right or wrong, hard way, the long way, the short way, to make sure it came right. And all of those migrants did that. And we need to thank you all for that very special colour, themes and distinctness. And married up with all of that is the themes of love, and themes of family, and themes of culture and community. And of course, you can't express any of that in our culture and many other without food. And you'll see with my dad's story, the concept of food is there's a common theme that runs right through. So, if I may, begin with the story of my father. My father was born in 1934 in the Bertiglio, in Cipollone, which is in the city-state of Benevento, region of Campania, which is very, for those who don't know, is Neapolitan, not too far from Naples. It was a very busy little family. My grandmother delivered 8 children in a matter of 10 years. So my dad, as you heard, was twin to his partner. She not only had one lot of twins, but then had a second lot of twins. Then bettered that by having a set of triplets. So that all happened in a 10-year period. So as you can imagine, it was already difficult times. There wasn't a lot around. They suddenly had a space problem. They suddenly had a food problem. So my dad, being the oldest and his twin brother, got shipped out. They weren't allowed to stay with the family. Then my dad went off to his paternal grandparents. His twin brother went off to the maternal grandparents, and I think one of the other siblings had to go with someone else. So talking to my dad, and that happened at the age of 5. And my dad said that was probably one of the loneliest times of his life. But at the same time, he said it was probably some of the most precious times of his life, being with having his grandparents all to himself and sense, you know, he really reflects and marvels at one of the life teachings he had, and he picks the wisdom actually came from his parents. So, at the age of 9, they were able to all get back together again, so all the siblings all came together because things had got better. Up until that time, Grandpa had to work abroad in other countries to send the money back home. He went as far as Northern Africa and there. But at that point in time, I was able to keep it there. But another 5 years went past and he made a decision that the boys would go to Australia. So at the age of 14, he said, twin boys, it was 10 pounds or 10 shillings, I'm not sure which one it was, and put them on a boat and off they go. And he said, you know, you pave the way and we'll be over in a couple of years' time. Now they were partly chaperoned by some family members, not all the way, part of the way, and there were certainly some family members who met them. So my grandfathers had a couple of brothers here already. But, so they arrived here at 14, at 15 Dad had his first job as a cotton spinner in the cotton mills, and I think the name of the company was Davis Cooper Cotton. And I think at the time they were one of the largest cotton manufacturers in the Southern Hemisphere. So that's where he started his first job. But within a year he felt, well, this is not good enough, I've got my dad's family and all the siblings coming over in a year or two, we've got to do more than this. So together with his youngest uncle that was here, Kintore, they took over the Tivoli Cafe in Bridge Street. Yeah. And which then became Donato's Cafe. And then a year later, twin Mario came back and together collectively they started what is known today as the Donato Catering Service. And so within a year the family had come, they all the siblings and the whole family became part of the family business, and then took on 2 boarding houses as well. So quite an industrial unit. You can see by the previous photo, if you want to spin back a little bit, you can see that they all had that spark in their eye, they all had that street business. If you haven't worked out which one Dad was, he's the one right at the very back on my left, your right. And you can see very close to his sisters and brothers. And I showed this to one of my clients the other day, and he said, oh, your dad looks like Freddie. Yes, it's always a start. So, there's the beginning of their catering days, and you can see the top right-hand side there, my dad right on the farm, but that was amongst a number of the family who were in the catering, including Mum's brother there. I think Carmen's in there as the little fella with the scraps. And so that's where they started there. Now, while Dad did move on and didn't stay 100% in the catering business, he still nevertheless was there every weekend to look after the main table and host the wedding parties and all of that. And they worked very, very good. They started off just doing sandwiches. They had imagine at 15 and 16, they had no license. They had to bring up a taxi to deliver all their trays of sandwiches. So anyway, that's their beginnings, and I still remember their busiest night was having 1,200 people at Centennial Hall, in the showground, having 320 people at the Lithuanian Hall, and having another 120 people at Mount Barker all in one night. So very, very busy, very industrious. And today, while my dad wasn't actively part of the building, you will see the legacy of that catering family as the Donato reception. So it's still there today. All right, move on to the next slide. Well, as part of that catering, there was a night where Dad was busy working, it was a wedding, and he saw my mum. But he also noticed that every other single male waiter there had also seen my mum. And he dropped everything he had and made a dash and got there just ahead of the others, asked her to dance, and the rest is history. But his commitment to mum was legendary. I mean, in those days, you know, as a young lady, you weren't allowed to talk to young boys. It's very strict times, and Dad, in his commitment and love and dedication, would catch the bus. His mum was at secretarial school, Merton College. He would catch the bus stop before she got off, travel all the way, the whole distance, and then got off the bus on Bath. So, just to make it not apparent that there was something going on. There was nothing, it's a bit of talking. So, and that went on for quite some time. And then we talked about the food theme again, the way he wooed Grandma and Grandma was to come down and do the food and make food. I think this is my finger. I'm putting my right, sorry. But you can imagine, my mum was a very beautiful lady, and there wasn't that very many ladies in those times from Italian origin, lots of young men, and there were knocks on the door every night to ask for their hand. But my dad and his persistence paid off. So then they got married, so this all happened, so they met, so dad would be 19, so at 22 they were married. First loan, mortgage, didn't have a car, had to travel everywhere by taxi or bus or walk or bike. And so we were born, well, he became a dad at 27, grandpa at 50, great-granddad at 73, and we have a step-great-grand from a granddaughter, a step-granddaughter of mine back in the UK. So one could almost say that he's gone beyond great-granddad to great-great-granddad. So a wonderful set of generations, and a wonderful story from there. Dad, from the catering through Mum, was able to secure a job because we needed more money to raise a family, of course, and trying to share income with the whole stack of siblings and parents wasn't enough to raise a new family. So he went on to work for the Mutual Association of South Australia, which then got taken over by Mutual Community, which is now Boot. So Dad spent 38 years with him and won, and he was a recipient of many awards. He was probably the only Italian at the time in that whole department. And you can see when the next slide comes through, there he is, I think, where he wins a special plate and gets a gold watch and all that through his work. Dad's other love and commitment to the community, in addition to being a foundation member for the South Australian Italian Association and working with Meals on Wheels and Non's Cucina and all of that, was his commitment to this church, the parish being a beauty fund. He was with the Festa di Montevergine group, not for 10 years, not for 20 years, not for 30, but for 60 years. He remember being volunteered for 60 years, and many of those years as it's treasured. The Festa, as you all know, is probably, if not probably one of the most successful festas and largest festas in South Australia, and has been since the beginning, if not Australia. So there's a testament to Dad and his contribution to that. And then the next slide we see his precious and beloved. Oh no, sorry, that's our family tree in terms of from himself. And then that's the beloved church where he spent those 60 years contributing back to the site. So definitely a story of not dissimilar to many other migrants who put in so much, achieved so much, and left a lasting legacy. But you know, one has to wonder at all those that profound impact of all those migrants, all those many interweaving threads to make that wonderful tapestry that we call multicultural. So thank you very much, President Joe. It's been a pleasure.
We now invite Councillor Dr. Rachel to speak about her parents, Raphael and Maria Grazia Troppi, an incredible story of love, courage and determination they carried from Italy to Australia and into the hearts of all who knew them. Please join me in welcoming Councillor Dr. Rachel Troppi.
I'm a teacher by trade. Can you hear my voice?
Yes.
We can't hear on the end of the door. Please.
Okay, a love story. Who doesn't like a love story? But when we talk about stories, we're actually talking about spirit. Stories are just what spirits drive. And so all of the stories encapsulated in this journey are the spirit of people who took a risk and made their reality real. And it didn't come without some kind of price. This is one of two photos that I have of my grandparents. Rachele, to your left, and Giovanni on your right. My grandmother was 3 years older than my grandfather. She was wealthy, he wasn't. And so he took advantage of that, and I'll tell you how. This is my grandmother, about 25 years after she got married. Like you, Philip, 2 sets of twins. And we, as children, grandchildren, were all terrified because twins skip a generation. We all thought we were going to have twins. But we didn't. I've got 4 children. Now, my father, the centrepiece, is my grandmother. There to the left is my father. He's 15. And already he's taking care of the family. 11 children, Philip. 11. 2 died. First sister, Crescenza, one of 11. She died in childbirth. She died in childbirth, and the child, little boy, died 5 days later. Why? No money, no doctors. And Crescenza and Raffaele, my father, were very close to each other. In 2012, I went to Italy and I went to Benevento, to the cemetery, and I paid my respects to my auntie. And the baby is buried with her, including my nonna, Rachele, who was in a different casket. There's Mum, stunning. Of course my dad fell fallen in love after his 10 other girlfriends. She was 18, and she was number 5. Now here's the rub. My grandparents were first cousins. They were 20 years apart. But because my grandfather had gone to America in his youth, he came back and all the girls were gone. He had money. And so his cousin became the love of his life. But that came with a price. Vincenzo, the eldest, I didn't put his name up, died at 12. A disability. Antonietta, Gelsomina. The story goes that my grandparents eventually became poor, and so they had to give away Gelsomina to a zia who had no children, but whose zia had property. Then there's Maria Grazia, Maria and Mario. It gave me an understanding that my grandmother entrusted her last 3 children to Mary, the Virgin Mary, to look after Maria, Grazia and Mario, Mary. In 1951, my mother, by the way, was in love with my father since the time she was 10, but she had living on. And finally, when he broke up with his last girlfriend, Mum swooped in. And they got engaged in 1951. Lucky for me. And she couldn't get married because in the culture, you had to marry off the first oldest one, under the actor. And so Mum's there with my dad, engaged, but her mother knew nothing. It was a secret photo. And there's the Antonietta, finally. Now Mum can get married. There's Lucia. Notice the cigarette? I don't know how he got away with that, but that was the cultural times. And my mother had gone to school for 3 years. But if you look at the writing, she says, alla mia età 21 anni, she's 21. She writes a behind photo to my father. And I love this because it says to me that they were truly in love with each other. Per sempre in eterno. Forever, forever, and forever. Pulito, grazie to Raffaele Giorgi. This is Mum's Rosario Pulito. She lost her husband when she was 65 in 1947. I'll quickly give you the background. My grandfather had come back from America and he bought a farm, a share farm. So he had the tenants living downstairs and he was living upstairs with his family. One year, my grandfather was very sick and could not go to il notaio. In other words, the person who renewed the lease. So the tenant downstairs said, "Don't worry, can't you? I'll go for you. All you have to do is sign." My grandfather was illiterate. The man went to Benedetto, got the papers, got my grandfather to sign, and before he knew it, my grandfather had signed over the whole property to the tenant. The war broke out, and all of the men had gone to war. So my grandfather and grandmother, with 6 children, were out on the streets. And Mum always said, "Thank God for my uncle, Zio Zapatero, her uncle, who took them in." But because of the stress of losing everything, my grandfather had a stroke and died a couple of years later, stress related. So when she was 45, 5 surviving children, and nowhere to go. But when she met Dad, she's ready to go to Italy. And she arrived on the 13th of June, and our young people would not believe this. She got married in 2 weeks. You would not believe it. In a borrowed wedding dress. If you know the Izzos, who were tailors, that's Mrs. Izzo's wedding dress, and she's still alive. Yep, in the Italian tradition, you got wrapped up like a salami. Love it. And there were still some fun times. My uncle on the right, he got married by proxy. She was over in Italy, he was here, they got married. And that was quite a thing sometimes, being married by proxy. And then the babies started coming. Only 2. How can you go from 11 children to 2? It was because they didn't have mommy here. They didn't have anyone to help them. So you know what? They cut their losses. They had plenty of brothers and sisters. It's going to be 2, and that's it. And they had fun times. Look at my mother. She's drinking beer and she's pregnant with my brother. That would be mandatory reporting nowadays. And they lived at 58A Gladstone Road, Marlene. This is the irony. This house was built in the 1900s by a ship captain. My parents came out by ship, and all of a sudden, they're in the ship's captain house. There's Giovanni. We always know that Philip was called after Nonno, right? Raquel was called after Nonna. Giovanni is called after Nonna. He didn't deserve it though. He was a naughty boy. Sons and daughters were always called after their grandparents. It's the way of remembering our heritage. And there, my mum's family, by the way, you can't see me, but you can notice me. The one on the right, I'm in there, I'm about 6 months. And that's Mum's family, the brothers and sisters. What joy to have your family around you. There's nothing better. And then, me. Did you know that Nonna, when I was 6 weeks old, took each of my tender little ears with a sharp needle over fire and manipulated spirits? That's how we had it done. And you know why? Because if Nonna had died, I had a memory of my grandmother, and my grandmother gave me my first earrings. Yep, 6 weeks with a needle and a spiegel on my arm. I don't remember a thing, to be honest. I'm glad. My daughter had her ears done when she was 12, and the guns got stuck in her ear in the first year. It was terrible. So Dad was one that kept calling out all the family. That was wonderful. There's my nonna Giovanni and Zia Filomena. And one by one, brothers and sisters, they all got married and they left the ship captain's house. After 6 or 7 years of being in Australia, that's what my family looked like. We were prolific. And everything was homemade. Everything. All my dresses, all of my dance clothes as well. And family gatherings were such an important part. I really mourn the loss of grandparents and my own parents because they are the glue. They are the glue of society. They are the elders that encourage you. And their stories is not just a story, it's a spirit. It's a spirit that our young people need to hear. Because we will talk about resilience, when we talk about young people and self-harm. I could not do what my parents did. I don't think you could do what your parents did, because this is a story of triumph. And it's within the spirit of these stories that our young people can grow to become stronger themselves when they marvel at what has been. Without education, without a future, without a house, they made it. And finally, I'd like to share you this story. That man on the right was my dad's best friend. And he said to my father, "I will get married." But there weren't any girls that he liked, and the girls didn't like him. So my dad wrote to the village. You see that lady over there on the right? She'd just been dumped after 15 years by her boyfriend. Her boyfriend married her best friend. So she was in the village and she's saying, what am I going to do now? So a letter went from my father here, and it reached her, and she said, "Stuff it, I'm going to go to Australia. I've got one photo of this man, and I'm going to go." So within 3 months, she got married by proxy. My dad stood in for her in the St. Patrick's Church in Grove Street, and she never met him. She never met him. They celebrated 55 years of marriage, 2 children. Our young people don't understand how it works. I don't understand how it works, but I'll tell you what, our family made it work. Thank you very much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps it up. I'm sorry, I probably kept it longer than I anticipated, but you can see how it comes from the heart. The stories, what we are, who we are, where we come from. It is a matter of passion and a matter of the heart. Thank you for your attendance, and we feel honoured by your presence.